Wake up. Dude, wake up. Wake up!
What?
You have a show to make.
Oh man, I'm sorry, Marvin. I just had the strangest dream. I was doing a video about my top 10 favorite Disney songs, and I had these weird eggs, and I opened one up, and it said, "The sky is falling."
That wasn't a dream, dude. That just happened.
Oh no.
Oh, yes.
Does that mean I have to?
Yes, I'm afraid you do.
Okay. Why does this movie exist? You see, Chicken Little came out during the sort of puberty stage of Disney animation, in the sense that they started to make movies with more 3D feel to them as opposed to the tried and true formula that had been widely successful for about 70 years. For me, these transition years consisted of 3 movies: Chicken Little, Meet the Robinsons, and Bolt. Now, there might be more of them, but these are just the 3 that I'm focusing on in this segment. I'm not gonna get into Bolt. It sucks too, and it may even be worse than Chicken Little, but it's been years since I've seen it, and I think most of my hate for that movie came from my unrealistic expectations, whereas Chicken Little, I knew what I signed up for. Anyways, I'm reviewing Chicken Little, so, and I'm doing a traditional movie review of it, so the same grading rubric that I've done in previous movie reviews applies. So here's a little rundown of the plot, and buckle up, it's a real cluster-cluck of a storyline. Basically, Chicken Little, or Chicken, or Little, I still have no clue what this dude went by, lives in one of those worlds we see all the time in animated films, featuring a cast of talking animals, a personified society with human-like qualities, and architecture with no signs of human life whatsoever. And this town looks pretty bland, but even if it wasn't, there's no elements of world-building, because the first scene is Chicken Little running his mouth and ringing a bell, screaming about how the sky is falling. Of course, like any sane person or creature, I guess, doesn't believe him, and he basically gets canceled by the town. They take it a step further. They don't just shun him. Most of the townspeople bully him on a daily basis. Even his own father is a neglectful parent who doesn't even believe his own son and constantly acts disappointed in him throughout the story. The only people that have Chicken Little's back are his equally alienated friends. Then the story pivots from Chicken Little's life sucks to Chicken Little tries out for the baseball team, which he miraculously gets on, and even more miraculously is able to win a crucial game for them. He wins back some favor with the town, but it is quickly tarnished again. He and his friends stumble across an alien spacecraft that may explain his fear of the sky falling in the beginning. After confirming that this is the case and that the aliens are in their town, he sounds the alarm again, but conveniently the aliens bounce and Chicken Little is once again canceled. But this time it's even worse, with his father full out disowning him. Chicken Little falls into a deep depression until he discovers that a baby alien was left behind, and not long after, the aliens come back. It appears that this time they're here to conquer their town or Earth or whatever too, and slowly the townspeople realize Chicken Little was right. So they all band together to combat the aliens, who are actually just looking for their missing child. And once that conflict is settled, the aliens depart in peace and Chicken Little goes from a pariah to a hero. So that's the cliff notes of the story. Here are my notes. Obviously, I have some problems with it. But starting off with the positive, having the story begin with the fall of the main character is something I can't say I've seen that much before in movies. It's always the main character rises to power, something happens that tarnishes his name, and he comes back for redemption, but this time, the story cuts right to that middle part. That's a really interesting and unique dynamic, I think. I'm not necessarily saying that it's a good thing that other movies should do, but in this movie's case, it's not terrible. Next, I want to talk about the sort of Chicken Little's life sucks sequence where Murphy's Law is directly in play, showing everything that could go wrong with him does go wrong, to the point where physics in general are completely thrown to the wall, which is a recurring theme in the movie. But after that, the introduction of the friends is pretty well timed, I think. You know, it would have been too clunky to incorporate them too much before or after that sequence. But I hate this baseball plotline with a burning passion. It feels extremely out of place, and the outcomes of it are just undid by later events. And considering the runtime of this movie is already relatively short, the fact that it has any filler at all is extremely disappointing. This scene ultimately has no effect on the overall plot. I mean, if this whole plot point didn't happen, likely the discovery of the spacecraft would still happen, and the recanceling of Chicken Little isn't as important of a part of the story when you think about it. He could still feel the same amount of pain with nobody still believing him, without him ever earning their trust back. Also, for a movie this juvenile and innocent, the tension between Chicken Little and his father, a widower, is a pretty mature plot point for this kind of movie. Now, that's not a bad thing, really, and it even fits in the story relatively well for such a mature, theme, it's not like it sticks out from the playful nature of the film. I actually can't decide if the whole inclusion of the aliens was a shark jump or a reasonable route for this movie to take. On one hand, usually the addition of aliens to any form of media where it would be inappropriate is a bad thing, but on the other hand, the aesthetic of the world fits in very well with aliens to a certain degree, as it is a more rural community, and it's a pretty clear explanation as what actually fell from the sky that day. Finally, as bad as this movie is, I can't help but realize that this movie too is a victim of being ripped off by an equally horrible movie, Home by DreamWorks Animation, which came out like a good decade after this. For one thing, the menacing alien in Home pursued the main alien race in Home, but his only ever intention was to retrieve the last descendants of his kind, not to eradicate the other aliens. And that sounds a lot like how the aliens invaded Earth in Chicken Little, but it doesn't end there. Look at the main characters of both movies. They're both ostracized from the rest of their own society because they're irresponsible and untrustworthy, when all they ever wanted to do was help and contribute to their community. Now, I could be wrong with this, and I don't think that DreamWorks deliberately tried to rip off certain parts, but they've done so in the past. Anyways, let's look at the characters, who range from genuinely lovable to downright despisable. First and foremost, Chicken Little. I can't say much bad about him, actually. He's easy to sympathize with, as pretty much everyone agrees that people not believing you when you're right can hurt more than some physical pain does. And he does fit this nerd archetype we see all the time, but he fits really well because he's more of a deep and robust nerd. My only complaint is that some of the physics in this movie regarding him are downright stupid, and I know it's a movie, so things aren't always going to be realistic, but some scenes just seem unrealistic even for movie physics standards. Then there's his father, Buck Cluck, who is the worst dad character I've ever seen in a movie. I'm not saying he's a poorly written character, though he isn't the best written, I don't think, but he's just prideful and treats his son like trash just because he didn't turn out how he hoped, which is a pretty common trope, but it fits there, but it does fit here. So I guess he's not really a bad character, he's not really a poorly made character. He's just not a very likable character, which I don't know if that brings the points down in this category or not. All I have to say is, you know a character is truly despicable when his own wife died and you still can't sympathize with him struggling to parent. Now let's look at Chicken Little's friends and classmates. And these are the real characters that shine for this movie. Starting with the main friend / later love interest, Abby Mallard. She's probably my favorite character in this whole movie. Sometimes she even feels like the movie's conscience, as she's one of the more rational and calm thinkers throughout the film. And even her romance with Chicken Little at the end doesn't feel that forced at all. It was perfectly developed over the course of the film and reached its breaking point when the most was at stake. Then there's Runt, the morbidly obese pig who serves as the comic relief of the friend group. He's the most anxious and jumpy character in the entire movie, and for some reason he has an unhealthy obsession with 60s and 70s music, especially Barbra Streisand, which he references often. In a way, he also kind of reminds me of Carl Reiser from Jimmy Neutron. Overall, he's not the best character in this movie, but I can understand his importance. Fish Out of Water, or just Fish, is a hysterical character, proving to be the king of physical comedy in this movie. The one complaint I have is that this mute / foreign language speaking / only speaks gibberish character trope has been way overdone, especially when that trait is often used as a punchline. Then there's the aliens, who weren't bad and could be funny at times, but they were ultimately unforgettable. Then there's by far the most hateable character in this entire movie, Foxy Loxy. I have never hated any character more since that insufferable kangaroo in the Seussical. You got this? I was elated to see Foxy literally die at the end of this movie, only to be disappointed to see the aliens revive her mere minutes later. This fox is just so mean to not just Chicken Little, but every sentient being she comes into contact with, and having to see her on my TV sends me into a blind rage. And the thing is, an unlikable character isn't a bad character, but when an unlikable character is in a bad movie, then they're just bad. Besides that, there's the other ensemble characters like the mayor, and they all suck too, but luckily they don't play a huge part in the movie. Finally, the overall quality. Now, these days, the animation of this movie isn't anything to write home about, but in its defense, this movie was one of the first, 3D animated Disney movies, kind of what I mean by that is, the ones that look like Pixar. So it's not like they would nail it on the first time, let alone holding up today. But the writing... Oh, the writing is absolutely abysmal in this movie. I actually forgot I was watching something by Disney, and instead a movie by the same jokers who made Food Fight. The score, if you could even call it that, is lackluster, and all the songs are done by pretty well-known musicians and groups like Bare Naked Ladies, R.E.M., and Five for Fighting. And, well, some of those songs were definitely already made before this movie. Even Wannabe by Spice Girls finds its way into the movie as a gag, which is kind of funny, but also sort of unsettling. Well, Well, what I mean by that is it's not just played over a scene, but Abby Mallard and Runt are singing it through a karaoke machine. So it's not just like played in the backdrop like this, but they're singing Spice Girls. Now, what does that imply? It sounds like it's implying that Wannabe is a real song in this movie's universe. But does that also imply that the Spice Girls exist in this movie too? And if so, why do they exist and not people like Michael Stipe or John Ondrasik, the people who sang other songs used in this movie? Now, don't get me wrong. I love all this music, but this is a Disney movie. You know, the company that made original songs that are still sung to this day by children and adults alike when they're alone in their cars where nobody can judge them. Would it have killed them to just write a few songs? It's not like this story doesn't lend its hand well to some good song ideas. I know Meet the Robinsons did something similar too, but at least they used pieces from lesser known artists so we could all just pretend that they were original songs. So there you go. I had a ton of fun making this video. I love being critical of movies. I'm usually a more positive guy, but it's just fun when I can come across a bad movie and be like, oh, I want to lay into this and make a video. I feel so much angrier in this video than I do in other videos. So I love making these movie reviews. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let's see. I have my master document where I write all my scripts pulled up right here. Let's see what video I'm making next. Oh.